diaspora to talk more about what exactly this means for us, our journey so far. And inshallah, today we have our guest who will be joining us. But already we have one of our guests who is already here with us, and we'll quickly take you through his resume and just an abridged one, because until last night I was looking through the resume and I said, well, I went through page 1, 2, 3, and on, and we kept on going. And I said, wait a minute. Well, for the purpose of this conversation, we'll just have it abridged and get a sense of what our guest is about nationally and internationally. We're joined and honored to have Honorable Justice Habib Olumuyiwa Abiru join us today. He's a Nigerian, and the special thing about Justice Abiru is that this month of October is also his birth month. So he shares the same birth month with Nigeria. Specifically, his birthday comes on the 17th of October. And he's married with children. He lives in Lagos, Nigeria. And his education qualification runs through many pages. And I mean many pages as well. Well, he's also, a chartered, a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Chartered Arbitrators, also a member, Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, United Kingdom. He's also, of course, no doubt, he's a lawyer. He holds a master's degree from the University of Ife in 1987. And of course, he went through the Nigerian Law School in 1985. And of course, quite a number of other things that you can actually find in his academic pursuit. Looking at his work resume, Court of Appeal, Nigeria, he's a Justice of the Court of Appeal presently. He's been there since 2012 to date. And also he had a stint with the Lagos State Judiciary. And of course, he's also giving back his own time to that profession by teaching law at the Lagos State University, Ojo, between 1999 and 2001. And Honorable Justice Abiru would like to say happy independence and thank you for finding time to join us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start in earnest. I do not, because I don't know if we have our two other guests already with us live. If once they come on, we'll just let our viewers get to know about them, because I can only see Justice.
Suleiman, they're already here. The solar guests are here.
Oh, awesome. So, let's then we also have our mother with us here. I think the list of our panelists is really a complete one, because we have a woman who's not just a woman, she's a mother to many, and of course a sister. And Amina Oyagbola is a corporate director and a former human resources and corporate services executive at MTN Nigeria Communications Limited. She has over 35 years experience, and her career spans legal consulting, banking and finance, oil and gas, and telecommunications. She is the managing consultant of AKMS Consulting Limited, business advisory and management consultants. And she's a partner in Oyagbola's Chambers and a chief name scholar. She obtained her undergraduate law degree from Ahmadu Bello University, her master's in law from Trinity College, Cambridge University, and her MBA from Lancaster University. She's also an alumnus of INSEAD, Lagos Business School, IMB, and Harvard Business School Executive Education. As I said, with Honorable Justice Abiru, her resume well, spans more than some pages that we would want to deal with. So we'll just leave it at that and say we're honored to have you here. Amina Oyagbole, thank you, and a happy independence.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
All right, good. And well, not the least, but he's also honored us to be here today. Kamar Bakrin was until recently operating partner at Helios Investment Partners, the world's largest Africa-focused private equity firm, where he headed the Nigeria office. Prior to this, he was a director at the corporate office of the Nigerian conglomerate, the Honeywell Group, responsible for the natural resources and power infrastructure businesses. Mr. Bakrin previously served as MD CEO of Oando Energy Services, during which he led the transition to a full oil field services company. He was, before that, the chief executive of Oando Marketing, after having been the head of corporate development of Oando's holding company. Before returning to Nigeria, Kamar was a consultant with the Boston Consulting Group in the US, and he has also worked with Colgate-Palmolive, South Africa, and Arthur Andersen, now KPMG. Within the Muslim community, just as our other two distinguished panelists, Kamar was the first Naibul Emir of Micah, that's the Movement for Islamic Culture and Awareness, and he's the immediate past chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Clear Path Islamic Center. Guests today on a special day of Nigeria's independence. Once again, happy independence to everyone. And we'll start in earnest. Let me start with Honorable Justice Abiru. Perhaps you tell us, take us through memory lane, what it means for you to celebrate October 1st, not October 17, which is your birthday. Let's look at October 1. What does October 1 mean to you growing up?
Seriously, when we were younger, October wants to be, we celebrate in school, primary school, secondary school to be a big event. We come out to wish Nigeria well. But as we grew older, the meaning, it took a different meaning because now deeper, you reflect deeper as to what exactly Nigeria has achieved in the years you're talking about. And I begin to question, begin to worry about why we are not getting any progress in it, begin to worry about where we are heading and all that. So for me, the last few years, it's been a time of sober reflection, really, for what could have been and what can be, really. I don't partake in all this, all the marches, all the slogan shouting that's going on, but we reflect as to what was in those days, what is and what can be, really. So it's actually a time of reflection for me right now, presently.
All right. Amina Oyagbole, so take us through all of this. As a young lady growing up in Nigeria, October 1st must mean something to you as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, for asking me that question. For me, first of all, let me say that I was born in 1961, and I'm an April child. So I was born a year after independence, and it was a time, I remember all the stories that my parents used to share with us when I was much younger, about how it was a time of a lot of hope, a lot of excitement, a lot of opportunity, a time of prosperity. In fact, I was given a special name because a lot of abundance came at the point of my birth. And every October 1, even for me personally, professionally, at the end of every year, is a time when I look back and I reflect. So every October 1 is a time when I look back and reflect on the country and the nation and where we are. Are we performing? What progress are we making? Are we moving forward? Are we maximizing our potential? Or are we doing the opposite? So unfortunately, I'm not happy to say that in the last few years, that every time this event occurs, I really ask myself, what is there to celebrate? I think, it's more for me a milestone. It's a marker. We mark it, I mark it, and I'm sitting down and I'm reflecting and I'm thinking about where we are as a nation and whether this is where we should be at this time, given our numbers and given all our resources. So that's where I am right now. But I'm still very hopeful. I'm still very hopeful, and I'm sure in the course of our conversation today, we will touch on the pertinent issues. Thank you.
Well, it's good to know you still have a big hope for Nigeria, because it is what propels everyone to keep on, moving and driving. Because today, for those just joining us, it is, Nigeria at 60, and we're setting the agenda for true greatness. And this is coming to you by the Guild of Muslim Professionals. Let me take this to Kamara and ask him the same question. For Amina, it looks like mixed, bag, but at the end of the day, she's told us that there's big hope. So what has this day, meant to you before now?
I'm sorry, I assume that question was for me. So
absolutely, yes.
I'm so sorry. I cut out for a second. Yes. For me, of course, like the other distinguished panelists, growing up, it was always a very momentous, if you will, occasion. And of course, as you get older, you're forced to really think because you're a lot more responsible and you become a more active player in the whole Nigerian project. And as a result, you have to think about the place of Nigeria in the world and the role of us as individuals in shaping this Nigeria story as it evolves. Now, obviously, we've gotten many things wrong, but I still remain super, super optimistic about the prospects of this country, just because, again, of the kind of people that actually, I believe, are absolutely committed to the development and the progress of this country. Despite all the negative forces, I do believe that there is a sufficient mass of people who are interested and are capable and willing to actually build a real nation. And I do think that the raw materials are all there. We have suffered a lot of leadership issues, but I do believe that the raw material is there to build a great nation, without a doubt. And this, for me, is what keeps me going. Thank you.
Well, it looks like everyone has got hope, which is one of the best things I think I've heard today. Just a moment ago, we watched Nigeria's President Muhammad Buhari give out his Independence Day speech. And one is tempted, let me start with you, Kamar. One is tempted to ask, in the face of all of this, how did we get here?
That's an excellent question. The way I look at that, and I think it speaks to the heart of some of the issues we're going to be talking about this morning. I think it's a combination of factors that have gotten us where we are today. I hold a rather controversial view that, quite frankly, at independence, we were not really quite ready. When I say we're not ready, unfortunately, I'm so relieved that my co-panelists who are older and wiser than me are nodding in agreement. I do not think we were ready. When I say we're not ready, I do not think we had at the time of independence a critical mass of capable administrators and managers. One, to chart the course forward. I thought, quite frankly, that the colonialists were quite selfish in just handing it over to us and running away. This is how I see it. I don't think we were quite ready. We could have spent more time developing the requisite manpower to be able to address the challenges of this nation, coupled with those centrifugal, if you will, those forces that kind of pulled us apart, ethnicity, religion, and what have you, that needed to be very carefully managed. I think it was a bit of a recipe for disaster. And quite frankly, if you look at it from that point of view, we're fared fairly well from that point of view, if you think about all the forces that are stacked against us. Now, having said that, we really do need to move on. And I think we absolutely need to focus on moving on. And moving on for me implies having the right kind of leadership in place going forward, having the right kind of plans in place going forward, and having the right level of accountability for our leaders going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll all talk about leaders now. Let me go to the Honorable Justice Abiru. When we talk about leaders, what comes to mind is perhaps we should start talking about the leadership recruitment process. Do we have it in place? And this is for Justice Abiru. I really want us to speak to that. Our leadership recruitment process, as for some, they think is being bastardized. Now, all in the name of, Godfatherism, all in the name, of so many, unsavory names, which in other climes seem to be okay. You've seen people say, well, we are a mentor to this person who is now my mentee. So do we have that maybe at Independence till this moment, knowing full well that we had pretty young people who actually fought for our independence?
See, seriously, we don't have a leadership recruitment process. We don't have one. Let me say, we have one. But it's not the idea. It's not what we should have. Everything dovetails back to what happened at Independence. I read an article recently by a former ambassador, Olisamika, and he said, look, at Independence, the Western region had its own high commissioner in London. The Eastern region has its own high commissioner in London. The Northern region has its own high commissioner in London. And Nigeria had a Nigerian envoy in London. To show you that even at Independence, we did not forge a union as before. And this is what has characterized our development up till now. We've not set in place leadership criteria for our people to follow. What we have is something, people come up and say, okay, this is the better person out of this person, out of the two of them. We never interrogate their capacity. We live on sometimes past glory report, what people say about the person. I will believe it and then we'll move on and then we get midway, find out this was the wrong choice. But by then it is too late for you to make any changes. We need to put in place critically a leadership recruitment process that will allow the best. Look, Nigeria is blessed with human capital. Let us be honest. I mean, read about Nigerians everywhere in the world. They are doing marvelous things where they are given opportunities to thrive. We need to put in place proper, be selective, really. That's something about a Chinese system in which they select who will be the next leader. There is a process, a deliberate process to this. We don't have anything like that. It's just a chance meeting. Somebody comes and says, okay, you are going to be governor. And then he becomes governor. You have godfatherism, you start fighting. You spend the next 4 years fighting throughout his tenure, and nothing gets done. We do not have a deliberate recruitment process in place, and I think we need to have one. Really, thank you.
Okay, well, appreciate more. We'll come back because you just reminded us of the regional system we had. And just recently, I had a conversation with Robert Clark, and he was talking about our parliamentary system, which he feels was even better than what we have now in our presidential system. But we'll come back, we'll look at the regionalism which you highlighted. It's quite interesting that in all regions at that time, we had representatives in, in the UK. And today, yes. Well, yes. It doesn't look like that's what we have. Let me go to Amina Yagola, because growing up, one wonders, because I know you're not a feminist, but I have to bring this up because it's something that concerns us. I grew up, and I'm sure you're older, you must have heard it. When people talk about the birth of children, people are quick to ask the sexes of the children. And the next thing is, oh, be man, when the person says, well, it's a female child. Really, I have two beautiful daughters. So let's ask our mother, our sister, Amina Yagola, how it's been growing up as a female child? Because today you are a leader in every right. How did it happened for you in our Nigeria at that time?
Well, thanks very much. I mean, you've touched on a very important point, which is the family unit and the family structure, because everything starts there. And the role of women is absolutely critical and fundamental. In fact, it's strategic in terms of the influence that they can make on the life of the child. This is that child that becomes the adult. Of course, it takes two to bring up a child. So the father also has a critical role, but let us accept that women are typically the natural caregivers at a very, very young age. And the most critical, and we're going to be touching more on this when we start talking about education. The most critical period for any child is the first 5 years, even before you start going to school. So you have to ask what influences, what values, what are those children being taught? What is being communicated to those children, male and female, at that stage? And that's what makes all the difference. What kind of environment, learning environment is being created? Are they being exposed to books? Are they exposed to violence? Are they being treated badly? Are they being well nurtured? All of these things go to intellect, go to creativity, go to innovation, and the confidence of that child going forward. And for me, I'm very, very fortunate to say that, you know, I'm where I am today because my father in particular and my mother, my father was gender neutral in terms of how he brought up his children. You know, he ensured that all his children, male and female, you know, had access to education. We all had we had equal rights at home, and we were all exposed to the same things, and we all had chores. You know, we all had our duties and our responsibilities, and discipline was imposed, you know, on everyone alike. So I grew up, especially when I got into the workplace, not really thinking of myself as a woman or a man. I just thought of myself as a worker. And that is really how it should be. That is how it should be. And this is an area that I'm very passionate about. You know, Nigeria as a country needs to realize that for it to be great, it has to be inclusive. You know, we're a diverse nation. And there's beauty in diversity, and there's strength in our diversity. We're not going to get the benefits or derive the dividends of that diversity if we are not inclusive and open in our approach. Everybody in Nigeria, our strength is our numbers, is our people, as Justice Abiru and Kamar have said. Our strength is in our people. They are our greatest asset. So how on earth do we think we can be great and take our pride of place in the Committee of Nations if we do not utilize the talent that we have, both in men and in women and in youth and in children and in able-bodied people and with people with disability and with Christians and Muslims alike? You know, everybody has to feel a sense of belonging. Everybody has something to contribute in terms of talents, in terms of skills, in terms of competencies. And until we ensure we develop a meritocracy, a system that will give everybody, every Nigerian, equal access. It's equal access to opportunity, you know, and it all starts with education. Because education, as Mandela says, is the most powerful tool that you can use to transform the world. And it's a truism. So that is what we need to do.
Well, I think now because now this sort of set the tone for what form of preparations some of us may have had. I'm talking about my panelists who will be speaking, you know, to some of the key issues that we have tried to touch on, albeit in a zigzag form. So I'll come back to Mr. Kamara now, and let's talk more about our business environment, because you have been operating there. I had this conversation recently with someone. I said, how is it that every time, well, it's good that you're from that's also your sector, well, we have a drop in the prices of oil, and the price of oil. Some countries like Nigeria don't collapse economically. And I started thinking, I said, perhaps because I had also this conversation with someone, and I said, perhaps, yeah, we agree that it's the informal market. And quite frankly, and sadly, they've not, it has not been captured by the government. The vulcanizer there, the mama who is selling rice on my street, the other friend who is selling carrots, fruits. Uh, they go on irrespective of what the government is saying about the price of oil. And at the end of the day, we realize that the economy is still thriving, irrespective of what people are talking about, on big television programs and in, seminars. So now let's start talking about SMEs and some of these things. How best we can harness, the potential, because now we're talking about setting the agenda and changing the narrative for our country, Nigeria, as it turns 60.
Thank you very much, Suleiman. First of all, I think just to clarify something, I think there's a common misconception that Nigeria is an oil economy. I think that's probably where a lot of this starts from. It's a very common misconception. When you ask people, how much do you think oil contributes to Nigeria's GDP? I assume, people are familiar with the term GDP, obviously, which is just a measure of the economic activity in the country. When you ask people, what do you think is the contribution of oil to Nigeria's GDP, people often vastly overestimate it. The truth of the matter is that oil actually contributes just about 9%, even slightly under 9%, depending on which year you measure it. Sorry, I thought I cut out for a second there. Sorry, they were just setting up the screen. Oil contributes just about 9% to Nigeria's GDP. Sectors like agriculture actually contribute over 30-something%, which explains to you why, because the rural farmer, quite frankly, doesn't, to a large extent, doesn't care about what happens to the price of crude oil, because it doesn't drive his activities, as it were, and so on and so forth. The real challenge is actually because oil then contributes a disproportionate amount, a massive amount of government revenues, and an even bigger amount of our foreign exchange earnings, and therefore affects availability of the dollar, which all of us, including myself, are absolutely obsessed with. So having said that, to your question about SMEs, the reality of Nigeria is that SMEs actually account for easily about 60% or so of Nigeria's economic activities, if you will. It is extremely important. The people you mentioned, the akara seller on the street and so on and so forth, they actually are by far the biggest contributors to Nigeria's economic activity. Again, yes, they also by numbers are by far more. But clearly, to your point, it then becomes very, very important to focus, absolutely laser-like focus, on improving the situation of these people. And there are about 3 or 4 challenges that they face. Okay, one is they lack access to finance. 2 is that they often lack access to proper markets, which is why their products either get spoiled before it makes it to the market and so on and so forth. They actually are faced with a high cost of operations due to things like harassment from local government officials, due to poor infrastructure, the fact that a barber has to provide his own generator to provide power, and so on and so forth. So many of these factors affect them. And number 4 is, quite frankly, a general problem of the country is that they are often lacking in skills, managerial skills, basic accounting skills, and so on and so forth, that you require to actually be able to run a viable business. Now, if you're going to actually help this sector properly contribute to the economy as it has the potential to, these are the 4 things that a responsible government has to absolutely focus on addressing. And this is something we need to pay attention to, especially as the oil begins to dry up, which inevitably it is going to.
Well, I think you touched on something very key here. I want to remain with you now for another 10 minutes. Maybe you should expatiate more on this now, because this is big news coming from you that Nigeria is not an oil producing nation because of the percentage oil contributes to our GDP. Let's start to look at these alternatives now, and also perhaps these diversion. I think it looks like it's a distraction. So is that what oil is to us as a nation, a distraction?
Fantastic question. I wouldn't call it a distraction. Oil has played, it has its positives and negatives, and I'm not sure who's controlling the slides, but I actually have a slide that speaks to that. The positives and negatives of oil in Nigeria's sort of like economic history. Oil has helped us build infrastructure. Okay, if you just scroll down a couple of slides, you'll see that oil has helped us to build infrastructure. If you remember all the bridges and the flyovers that Gowon built in the 70s, it was funded by oil. A lot of the government-owned sort of like businesses that were started here, just if you can just hold on here, oil has helped us to build a lot of infrastructure in this country, roads, hospitals, schools, and so on and so forth. It has done that for us. It has helped us to educate our people to a large extent because it has funded a lot of government activities, as it were. Now, of course, the flip side of oil, being a natural resource, it has also fueled monumental corruption. It is easier to steal oil money than to steal tax money. And the reason is very obvious. You go and, oil money, nobody feels they own it in the strict sense of it, okay? So it is much easier to steal it without repercussion. That is why it is so much easier to steal tax money, because if I walk and I make 100 naira and I hand over 30 naira to the government, I'm going to be very, very much invested in knowing how that money is spent. If, however, somebody goes to an oil well somewhere that I've never seen in my life, takes the money, gives me some of it, and steals the rest of it, quite frankly, it is less of an issue for me. So that is a problem. Another negative side of this oil has been that it has not helped us to, it has not helped government to build the proper tax base so that it can actually like get the right level of tax revenue from the citizens. I mean, of course, this swings both ways, because on the one hand, people feel, what am I getting from government? And on the other side, as the government is like thinking, you know what, let me just let them be so that they don't disturb me, because if I'm coming to collect money from them, they're going to be asking me how I'm spending it. All right, so it has also not helped us to be able to properly diversify the economy in the way that will create a much more robust platform for development going forward. So those are the pluses and the minuses of oil. So it's not all bad news, and definitely it's not all good news either.
But again, if you look at the SMEs, let's speak more on your presentation. Let's talk more about the potential of these SMEs, if you will.
Sure. As I said earlier, for me, the SMEs form the bedrock of Nigeria's development. There is a place for the large conglomerates, there's a place for them to play, but it's extremely important for us because you can only have so many conglomerates anyway in an economy. A lot of the economic activity will invariably, especially in a country in a stage of development, will be carried out by SMEs. So they are absolutely critical. Therefore, what is the role potentially both of government as well as other institutions and individuals in this case? A critical role for government, of course, is providing access to finance for SMEs. You cannot stress this enough. There's a lot of talent in the country. There's a lot of energy, a lot of entrepreneurial energy, which even other African countries will attest to. That Nigerians have a lot of entrepreneurial energy and very, very ambitious people and so on and so forth. It is therefore very critical to provide these people with access to affordable financing that makes it viable to do business. Of course, by the same token, it is also important to improve the operating environment for these businesses. And the way to do that is to ensure that we're able to provide a lot of sort of infrastructure that lowers the cost of doing business for people. It should be the responsibility of Baba at his own power source. It should absolutely not be the case. And somebody also just made an absolutely critical point. I need to key into Mrs. Oyabola's point about the role of women in all of this. This cannot be stressed enough. The women play such an incredibly important role, and they need to be specifically targeted with a lot of the SME intervention programs. It is very unfortunate how they are often overlooked in a lot of these intervention programs, and it is so critical to actually target women. Generally, it has been proven that they are better managers of money. They are much better at repaying loans. This I have seen from even some work that we have done sort of in the NGO space when we lend to
women. Is it me or I can barely hear you now? Looks like your audio is becoming robotic.
Okay.
You can hear you.
Okay. It's probably at your end. Oh. Okay, no, somebody also confirmed that. Again, these are some of the issues that we have to deal with. You know, this is some of the infrastructure challenges that we're talking about. But yes, seriously, it is very important, both in terms of infrastructure that will help to lower the cost of operations, as well as in being able to provide the necessary training to these SMEs to just improve their business practices and become a lot more effective and a lot more productive. These are things that we absolutely need to focus on going forward in the SME space. Thank you.
All right, okay, quickly before we go to our other two panelists, I want us to, lift something from your presentation there. You did say before the oil dries up. When will this be?
The estimate is that in the next 30 to 50 years, the oil will dry up. But more important, whether or not the oil dries up, I cannot stress this enough. Whether or not the oil dries up, we have to recognize that the place of oil in what is called the energy mix, that is the amount of energy that comes from the different sources of energy, whether it is oil, coal, hydro, solar, wind, and what have you, the contribution of oil will invariably decline because things like solar are becoming a lot more competitive. The price of solar panels have crashed massively in the past 15 years. The cost of storing energy, solar generated energy, is constantly reducing. The technology is getting much more efficient. It is incredible what is going on in that space. So whether or not the oil dries up, oil will increasingly become less of an important factor. And therefore, regardless, we need to wake up and begin to prepare for a world where whether the oil dries up or not, oil becomes less significant going forward. And this is what we need to be thinking about very seriously going forward.
Kamal Bakrin, thanks for speaking with us. We'll come back to have a conversation amongst every other panelist. Now quickly, I'll go to Honorable Justice Abiru. I recall we were talking about, I did ask you about the leadership recruitment process, and you've already set the tone for your own presentation. And some of the questions Nigerians are asking is in terms of governance. Now we're talking about good governance and politics, legislation, and the likes that also falls within your area of expertise. Now, Honorable Justice, let's have your presentation and see what we can glean from it.
Okay, thank you very much, Levan. Look, the topic you gave me is what needs to be done, certainly what needs to be done. Now, the topic is based on certain presumptions, I suppose. One, that we all agree that Nigeria can be great. And we all agree that Nigeria is not great presently. Now, what needs to be done? We all agree that those of us that are here and those of people that attend similar conversations are willing to walk the talk. When you say an agenda is not a one-day wish, something that we need a roadmap for, and we are all willing to take the steps that we need to take. If you look back, Nigeria has been great. I mean, it has some potentials for greatness and things like that. I remember years back, you read about things in which our Nigerian system, we had an educational system that was very rich, that people from outside the country actually came to Nigeria for university. Then migration was more to Nigeria than out of Nigeria. We had a health system that attracted people who came for medical tourism, just like we are doing now. People came from Middle East, from Africa here. So we've seen the elements of greatness in Nigeria. I mean, we had television station before some countries in Europe had television station in those days. And but things have nosedived. Things have just taken a complete nosedive. Right now, I mean, the last 2 days, I've read a lot about people's comments on Nigeria at 60. It's been despondency, despair. People have been complaining. Insecurity is at the highest. Right now, the call for dismemberment of the nation is at the crescendo. Everybody wants to go their way. Oduduwa Republic are doing their own protest today. Biafra are doing their own protest tomorrow. So we have corruption is at the highest. We've been referred to as poverty capital of the world. Education is at the lowest ebb. We said that we have about 10 million Nigerian students, Nigerian children without education on the streets. Now, but you see, my take is this. If we want to move forward, if we want to make progress, we need to have, because if you ask Nigerians some questions today, what is Nigeria? What does greatness mean? What is to be done? As many people as you ask would have answers, different type of answers. Everybody talks from different parochial perspectives and all that. My take is for us to move forward, we must have a consensus around certain key questions. We must have a consensus amongst us around certain key questions. And the first question we must have a consensus around, what does it mean for Nigeria to be great? What is the definition of this greatness that we are seeking? What exactly are we talking about? If some people now, they're looking at greatness along ethnic lines, along regional lines, along different areas. We must ask the question, what is this? Was that the consensus around this? Secondly, we must have a question around something that we were talking about before. What kind of leadership do we want? What kind of leadership are we looking for? Are we looking for leadership based on where the person is from, based on where the person's ethnic or religion? Are we looking for leadership based on integrity, modesty, and truthfulness, capacity to govern? Are we looking for leadership? And the leadership we're talking about is not only restricted to in terms of the political leadership. It should go across all strata of our existence. Is it in education? Is it in business? Is it in governance, academia, traditional leadership? What kind of leadership are we looking for? They must also have after having that consensus, we must then proceed on deliberate leadership recruitment process for the country. There must be a plan for deliberate leadership recruitment process in the country. Now, if you look at the system we have now, leadership is based, it's very haphazard. Someone just comes up. I mean, in some countries, you know who the next, for example, let me give you, even in some organizations, you have a president, you have a vice president, you have a secretary. There's a natural progression. Once the president leaves, the vice president becomes the president. I mean, in organization, that's the way it works. Because there's that leadership, there's that process that is put in place for them to get the leader they want. And again, we must then have also a consensus about how do we usher in political pluralism and inclusion in public governance. We spoke about this earlier today. How do we usher it in? We have a constitution that provides for political pluralism. What has happened is that the politicians have constricted this space. Now, for you to have any hope of becoming anything, you must belong to either of the two political parties. Other political parties are just addendum to what is happening. We must have a consensus. Is that what we want? Then we also must have a consensus on what kind of system of government do we want, taking into consideration our diversity and our differences and realities. We want a presidential system of government now. Is that what we want? Is that what will take us to the greatness that we want? Because we have a government in which we're spending almost about 80% of our income on running governance. Will that take us to the greatness that we want? I was reading something recently of a state governor who appointed 9 special assistants on religion. And he said that he has over 1,000 aides on state governor. Is that kind of system that will take us to where we want? What kind of consensus do we want to form around this? Again, we must have a consensus around how do we make governance to be about the people? How do we make government accountable to the people? How do we make it that it is the people that matter in the entire governance structure? We had an election recently in Edo State where there was so much news about this. When I looked at the entire thing, for me, it was about people, of people. It was not about the people who were going to govern. Monies was spent, billions of naira was spent on the election. Governors from other states brought money from men for their states for the election, but it was all about ego. How do we make governance about the people? How are the people that matter in our governance structure? Then also, we must have a consensus about our educational system. What was the education system will lead us to greatness? What are the investments we need to do in education? How do we put in place an education that will equip our young people to be leaders of tomorrow, to be business leaders, leaders in every sphere? What kind of education system do we put in place to build up these people? Then, again, I believe we must have also a consensus on how to enthrone a rule of law. A vision of justice system in Nigeria that is fair, just, trusted, swift, and effective. Kamara spoke about business, how do you equip business? One of the parameters for ease of doing business is the justice system. If you look at how Nigeria is graded, the justice system comes into it. How do you put in place justice systems that ensures greatness? We must have a consensus around this point as well. And then, for those of us who want to walk the walk, there are certain things that we must embody. One is we must love Nigeria. We must love Nigeria and must develop a national character. We must love the country, because if we don't love Nigeria, then we cannot work for Nigeria's greatness. We must love Nigeria. We must develop a national character in which what determines how we operate is that we hold the national interest supreme in every sphere. We do not hold ethnic agenda, religious agenda. We hold national interest supreme in every sphere. Also, we must inculcate in ourselves a duty-conscious mentality. We must have a duty-conscious mentality, not a right-conscious mentality. What we have now is that people are focused on rights rather than duties. The Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was reported to have said that a believer should be duty-conscious. As far as for his rights, he should ask Allah for his rights. So we must inculcate a duty-conscious mentality. For the duty of one person is the right of another person. If one of us perform our duties, then the rest of other people will be taken care of. We must develop that, and then we must understand, it was said this morning, that unity is the greatest strength of a nation. We must agree to disagree. We must understand that differences that we have is part of nature. There's no uniformity in nature. Differences is part of nature. We must be able to harness our differences, understand our differences, harness our diversity and believe that when we have differences, it's not about let everybody go their way. We must work at solving and resolving the differences and have the mentality that it's all about Nigeria and where Nigeria is supposed to go. Then we must, as a group, focus on doing progressive work in our neighborhood, in our city, in our nation, and for humanity. As Muslims, must understand that you're not a believer unless your neighbor is safe from harm. It's not harmed by you. What does it mean? In our approach to work, issue of corruption, issue of, you must eschew all this. You must ensure that you focus on progressive work that benefit your neighborhood. Just start from your neighborhood. Because if you don't do that, if you're part of the problem, then you cannot be part of the means of achieving greatness. They must also understand that building a growth and development of a nation is not a sprint. It's a lengthy race. It's a marathon. It takes time. Now, one of the challenges that we have presently in the things that happen is that politicians have weaponized poverty as a means of control. We must deliberately weaponize education, enlightenment of our people as a means of liberating them from the slavery they are in. We must make a deliberate attempt to begin to enlighten people in our sphere, people that you can reach, your mothers, your family, your parents, and all that. We must take steps to enlighten them. We must understand that the race to national development is not going to be won tomorrow. It's not going to be won in 2023. It's a deliberate process, but we have to walk the path. We have to understand that these are the things that needs to be done. Educate people around you, enlighten them as to what needs to be done. That's about the potential that Nigeria has. Let them understand that the division that is being brought about is for personal reasons. Let them understand that there is people, we need to come together as a nation for us to make progress. This is a duty that we have if we want to build a nation. It's like nurturing an orchard. You want to have an orchard, you must nurture it, you must water it, you must ensure it has air. If you go into the streets and are shouting about having trees, about what trees should be there, but you're not taking the steps to nurture the orchard, you have no trees. You have a lot of noise. A nation cannot fortify itself by working miracles in the field of politics. It's not about miracles. It takes time. It takes planning, unflagging, dedicated effort to building a nation. Now, what all this dovetails to is this: that Nigeria can be great. We have the human, material resources to be great. We need a group of dedicated people to walk the talk. We need to have common consensus around certain things that we will use to take steps going forward. And then we need to walk it. We need to understand the fact that we need to commit to it. Unless a group of us come together to commit to this, we'll come back next year and we'll say the same story. We'll come back in 10 years' time and we'll still be complaining. Nigeria is where it is today because it profits some people. People who go Nigeria to where it is today, they didn't start yesterday. It's what they have been doing for years. And they have developed a start and they are still doing it. We need to reverse that trend. We need to come to reversing that trend. It's going to be a very difficult job. It's going to be hard, but something that is doable. And unless we commit to it, we can't make progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Justice Abiru, for that submission there from your paper. The takeaways for me, I'm quite sure some of our viewers will also share the same. is looking at the leadership recruitment system, talking about educating our young, developing a national character, which is very, very key here. And, taking out the ethnic agenda, how we can also recognize them by saying, no, you can actually box me into all of this. That comes into play where you said something about enlightening the people to free them from slavery. People have been so enslaved thinking that the wrong things that have been perpetrated over time, over years, are the right things. Honorable Justice Abiru, thank you very much. So I think you've also touched on something that Amina Oyagbala, she will be expatiating on as we invite her to look at, speak more on education, youth and governance, as well as realigning our goals. It's your turn now, Amina Oyagbala.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Thank you. So that was wonderful by the Honorable Justice Abiru. I mean, I don't really think there's much more for me to add, to be frank, because I think that he has touched on all the key elements, all of which I identify with absolutely. I think where I want to start is to share something that former President Obama said about education. He said that education is not a name of any degree or certificate that can be shown to others as proof. Education is the name of our attitude, our actions, our language, and behavior with others in real life. And I think that that is particularly relevant given where we are today as a nation. And I also want to take us down memory lane a little bit, especially since we no longer teach history in our schools, which is a tragedy. It's
coming back. I hear it's coming back.
Such a tragedy, such a calamity. I don't know how we got to that stage, but if you do not know your past, I don't know how you can address the problems of the present and how you can even plan for the future. Education in Nigeria, historically was content-based. And most teachers, were, the missionaries, the priests who were very, very well educated. And the curriculum was very, very well thought through. They started off teaching in the vernacular and the local languages, then they moved to English, and then they focused on arithmetic. That's the history. They taught and focused on the fundamentals and on morality, and on ethics, and on civic duty. So 3 key pillars that were taught in schools were ethics, English, and mathematics. The people who went to those schools originally were well-grounded, without a doubt. In fact, if you met somebody who just did primary school, many of them are better than people who had a tertiary education. And it was all not based on certification. The focus was not so much on certification, but on what you learned and the skills that you acquired. And the testing process, the testing and the examination process was rigorous and vigorous. And it was, the outcome, which is what we must focus on, always focus on results, was that you now had very well-rounded individuals that were produced, who were able and who were competent and who were fit for the needs, and the gaps that needed to be filled in society at the time. So what went wrong? How did we get to where we are now? How has everything collapsed? So things started going wrong, in my opinion, when we stopped concentrating on the curriculum, and on the life skills. And then the emphasis shifted to certificates, titles, and just passing the exam by rote. Just pass through and get your qualification. And the emphasis was that everybody must be a professional, otherwise you would not be respected. You had to become a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, and so on and so forth. And everything else was downgraded. And so it was really just a matter of time before teachers themselves became substandard, and a large proportion of the early products of those schools that I spoke about, both the missionary and the government schools, became, what they became. In the past, when people went through school, one of the career aspirations they had was to become a teacher. That is how respected, the body of teachers were. They were highly regarded and highly respected in our society. But today, the only people who go into teaching are the people who have no alternative. After they've tried everything else and there's nothing else, let me go on to teacher training college and learn how to teach. Let me remind us also, since today is Independence Day, that the first prime minister of Nigeria, independent Nigeria, was Tafawa Balewa, and he was a teacher. He was a teacher, and he was highly regarded. Most of our leaders at that time, if you do the research, they were teachers. And so education became a question of structure, which is why it got destroyed, and not of content. And that's where things fell apart. And the teachers then fell behind. So it is not unusual today to find teachers who sadly cannot speak correct English, cannot even do not properly understand mathematics, and lack the fundamentals of morality. So you have to ask yourself, what are they teaching our children? What are they transferring? Because you can only give what you have. So the problem in Nigeria is that we were in such a hurry. That we forgot the fundamentals of education. And I really want to use today's platform to remind us that as a country, and if we have to look, we have the China example, we have the example of India. We really need, in terms of trying to reset our agenda for greatness, we need to ensure that we fix a major challenge and refocus and reimagine our education system. That is critical. And one of the key elements in doing that is also ensuring that we reintroduce history, reintroduce civic duty and ethics into our educational curriculum, so that we can learn from our mistakes and we can know who we really are as a people. We should also know who our real heroes are in the past. If you ask many of, even my own children, many of whom are now in their mid-20s and 30s, they don't, I mention some of the icons, they don't know who they are. They know nothing about them. And I think that's important. So what is the way forward? What is the way forward? For me, I think we need to stop being in a hurry and go back to the basics. I think we need to properly reassess our values and set of priorities as a people and as a nation. It is more important for us to give of ourselves, as Justice Abiru said, give of ourselves, service, be a servant leader, make a valuable contribution than to occupy big positions and titles. And that is what will make us really significant and successful in our society. It is more important to have a moral code, be principle-led, be values-driven, and to earn an honest income, and to invest time in trying to guide, the future generation that is coming up, and rather than just the acquisition of wealth and not wanting to delay gratitude and work hard and look to the future for your return on investment. You also gave the example of an orchard, Justice Abiru. When you till the soil, when you plant any seed, whatever that seed, it takes time. But unfortunately, we have developed a culture in the last few decades of not wanting to delay gratification, probably because of the introduction of oil at a time when we're not mature enough as a nation to be able to handle the fallout of all of that. So the other thing I want to mention is that no child must be left behind. So this idea, we have over 13 million children that are out of school, today. I mean, that is we're sitting on gunpowder, on a keg of gunpowder. No child should be left behind. So all the policy, we must legislate against child labor. We must legislate against, early child marriage. We must legislate about child abuse, and we must ensure and protect our children and ensure that every child has the opportunity to have primary education, because that is the only way we're going to be able to come out of this cycle of poverty that we have. Do we realize today on our 60th anniversary that over 90% of the population are living below the poverty line in this country? Do you realize that? It's huge. So, we need to ensure that we give people the very basics that they need to have to be able to help themselves, to lift themselves out. And it's education that will do that. And I want to also say, not just because I'm a woman, but the role of women in this equation is absolutely critical. And I think it was Kamar that touched on the importance of the SMEs as the engine of growth and the critical role that women play in that regard. We must pay attention to the importance of the contribution of women and youth to nation building. The importance of the female contribution to Nigeria's growth cannot be overemphasized. Women's economic inclusion and empowerment needs to be both a social and a business priority for greatness in Nigeria. There's a McKinsey report from the Global McKinsey Institute, and it revealed that Nigeria's GDP could grow by 23%, or in monetary terms, $229 billion. $229 billion, not million, billion dollars by 2025, 5 years from now. If, and it's a big if women participated in the economy to the same extent as men. It's a no-brainer. Women are a latent asset that are not being utilized because they're not being given access to finance. The obstacles, both cultural and religious, that are impeding their progress and their development are not being removed. They're not being enabled by infrastructure, all the things that Kamar had mentioned. And research has also shown that investing in women provides some of the highest return opportunities in a country like ours, Nigeria. So as women will use their earnings, not just to educate and bring up their children, they will use their earnings for every single member of their family unit, including their husbands, their brothers, and so on, and the men there. And the bargaining power to invest in their families and the communities will have a multiplier effect that will ensure the prosperity and and will fuel the economic growth, which will benefit all of us. So that's a very, very important element, and one that I really don't want us to lose sight of today, because as we're looking for solutions to make Nigeria great, that is one that is in our hands. We don't have to go and look for it. We don't have to go abroad to beg for loans. Right here, all we need to do is just tweak certain policies, introduce certain legislation, and create the enabling environment. And before you know it, things will start happening. I also want to, in touching on the subject of education, talk about very briefly the importance of resuscitating what I would call trade schools and the vocational colleges to really enable entrepreneurship. We're now in an era where, with technology and digitalization, skills of all kinds are really what is important today. And we must ensure that we enable that entrepreneurship and build the skills of the vulcanizer, the mechanic, the barber, all those people, so that they can prosper and they can create jobs and employ other people. We must try and regulate those different skills that exist, and ensure a form of certification, nothing too rigid, some practical tests that will ensure we take them to a certain level, that will make them also proud of themselves and enable them to aspire for even more greatness. We need to recalibrate, as I said, and reimagine education, because for several reasons, our population is ballooning. And if we don't, and of course, the majority of the population in Nigeria are the youth, over 70% of the population are under the age of 35. As a matter of fact, the median age in Nigeria, I don't know whether we're aware of that, is 18. So we need to ensure that we create an environment where, create a generation of skilled workers, where people are taught or can teach themselves how to build skills, and they can use those skills to sustain themselves and to generate wealth for the nation. And that will create jobs, that will take our youth from the streets, that will divert them from going into crime and unwholesome activities. So the message really is, let us reimagine our educational system to unlock the talents and the gifts that we have amongst our population, so that and ensure that we create a platform where people can self-direct their own learning, and they learn by doing. And not necessarily by going to university. So I'm not saying going to university should not be an aspiration, but university should not be the aspiration for the entire population. Those that want to harness this, they can become successful, become even wealthier than some of our most wealthy Nigerians, just by focusing on what they are good at. And I think that is what we need to do. So I think also in terms of the role of women and children, I think I mentioned this earlier. I think what we need to do is to be taught, is for the women at home in particular and in the workplace, but women in their capacity as the natural caregivers, need to take on that responsibility and duty to create a proper learning environment for their children, to keep the children interested, engaged, and to boost the creativity and innovativeness that children naturally have. And that will happen between the ages of 1 and 5, and even before they go to school, because most people don't go to school that early, unless, of course, the elite who can afford to send their children to nursery school and so on and so forth. So that's important. And I want to say that we need to also encourage a culture of reading, because it is the children that read, whose minds will be expanded. And through your mind, you can travel anywhere. And that is where you instill the juice of creativity in children, even beyond the formal education. So that's also important. I also want to say that and touch on the issue of a meritocracy and the importance of leadership. Now, the challenge we have in Nigeria, and in looking into the future for us to be great, we need to focus on leadership and in management. We touched briefly on the fact that we're faced with the fate of complete most of the time in our political dispensation. We need to begin to institutionalize processes that will ensure that we look at the most competent people. We look at competence, we look at capability, and we ensure that we look at character. Those are the 3 elements. We look at your qualification for a role. We look at the experience that you are bringing and your track record for that role. And then we look at whether, given the particular challenge that the country is facing at the time, whether it is this type of leader that can address and tackle that challenge. Because, leadership there's a different kind of leader for each season. Churchill was a great war leader, but he was not a very good peacetime leader. So we need to look, but did he have capabilities? Yes, he had. Did he have, competencies? Yes, he had. Did he have character? Yes, he had. But we need to also look at what is happening in our environment and the complexity of the challenge that we're grappling with and we're facing at a particular point in time to determine who is the right fit for that role. And that is what the Chinese have done. That is what the Indians are beginning to do. But if we in Nigeria don't look at those issues, like you do in private sector, in the public sector, and say, let's put in place a merit-based system. Let's begin to look at how we pay our public servants so that the temptation, to be corrupt is reduced. I'm very, very glad that very recently, I think a few days ago, the Secretary to the Government and the ICPC have released an ethics and integrity policy. I don't know whether we're familiar with it, but that is a step in the right direction. We need to come up with policies of that nature to say, for particular positions of office, you must meet a minimum basic requirement before you now look at other elements like geographical spread and ethnicity and religion to ensure, the diversity. Let's ensure that there's a baseline in terms of competency. It's only if we do that that we can begin to look to a future where things will be done properly. Finally, I think I want to say that in terms of citizen participation, that we must all play our role as citizens of Nigeria. We have a responsibility. If we do not take an interest in the governance of our country, then the wrong profile of citizens will take over and hijack our nation, which is what has happened. So especially the enlightened elite, who have been too comfortable sitting in our sitting rooms, having extensive debates on the issues concerning this country. We must participate. And in participation, what do I mean? We all do not necessarily have to become politicians. In our oasis of influence, in our different roles, we can ensure that we do things right, we do the right things, and we do things ethically, and we contribute and we serve. But when it comes to politics, we must all take an interest, because politics is where politics defines and influences our lives. It affects all of us, whether we like it or not. So how can we get involved? We can vote. We can ensure that our voices are heard. We can contribute financially. We can support a candidate of our choice. We can put forward candidates and enroll and organize ourselves to support them. We can ensure that when we can hold our public officers to account when we see them doing things that they should not be doing. We can write petitions. We can write letters. Something as simple as writing to your local government to make a complaint about an issue is very, very impactful. But we don't even bother. We'll just complain about it. We can lobby for certain kinds of legislation. And we can form special interest groups to put forward a case for change. We can also decide if we want to run for office, and we can hold public office, and we can serve our countries in different capacities, as some of the people on this platform are already doing. But the most important thing is, as a citizen of this country, we should recognize that we have a responsibility, and that we have a responsibility to take an interest in the governance of our country, not just for ourselves, but also for the future generations, for our children and our grandchildren. And I don't think that we are doing enough, as citizens of this country. We tend to sit, especially the elite, we tend to sit down and complain. And if you look at most transformations that have happened in other countries that we look to as role models, the transformations have been led by the enlightened elite who have taken action, who have performed their role. So the reasons why Nigeria is where it is today cannot just rest on the shoulders of the people who are in office today. All of us have responsibility. And as followers, we have, I think, even a larger responsibility to support and to hold the people who are in office to account. And I think, I will stop at that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, the conversation today, October 1st, 2020, has been a robust one. We'll just now have to, I got quite a number of issues you picked. You touched on, talk about substandard teachers. And I'm sure our panelists every one of you, sometimes you cringe when you see, especially someone in your profession, dropping the bar, or when they open, to express themselves. You feel so bad for your profession because perhaps that's just someone or product from a substandard teacher becoming a substandard student. And talk about training schools and people who have become our teachers is something that is very important here. Once I asked the police and some other, institute, why is it that those that you do not like are sent to training schools? So the people who go to training schools or who end up being teachers sometimes are people who are aggrieved, are people who are really sad about a system. So how then do you expect to get some of the best out of such persons? And you also talked about education for self-reliance, which is very key here. It should go beyond having a paper qualification. It should be about you being self-reliant, being, someone with good moral judgment and ethics, and high standard of morality. These are some of the things we picked. And yeah, you highlighted the issue of meritocracy, which, if you look at it from your conversation with us, it looks like there is a death, to meritocracy. People don't even look at those who should be somewhere to help plug the holes and, take us out of where we are at the moment. So in moving forward, I'll quickly want all of us to see if we can do this and wrap this up by 11 a.m. And let me start with Honorable Justice Abiru. I'll come back to you, Kamal Bakrin. Let's start talking about how now we have already seen how we got here, what we did wrongly, and in all of this, we've seen how we got here, how we got derailed. And in your conversation, Justice Abiru, one of the things that you also raised has to do with, the ethnic politics, which has crept into our psyche to the extent that everyone or anyone growing up, even a young Nigerian, will want to ask the question, where is he from? Is she one of us? No, 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 no. I think we had A, B, C from that region. In fact, let's situate it to today's discourse. It was only in the news yesterday, President Muhammad Buhari sent the name of the new GG, someone who should be the Director General for the Pension Commission, to the Senate. And Senator Abaribe picked holes in it because he's going by the Constitution. And the Constitution, the PENCOM Act says, if you have someone who's left from one particular region, you should bring someone to replace that person from that same region. So Justice Abiru, you will help us here, because if we still keep talking about these things, because constitutionally it is correct, regional politics, that is what we see. And perhaps those who are calling for a rejig of our constitution, are they right or wrong? How can we begin a process? That's the question now. How can we begin a process of national healing? Justice Abiru.
You see, you've asked a very touchy question. It's touchy for many people. One of our greatest challenges is the Constitution. Let's be honest. If you look at the Constitution, the preamble says, we the people of Nigeria having sat down and come together. No people of Nigeria sat down to form the Constitution. Some group of people sat down and wrote the Constitution based on certain understandings that they had. Because Constitution is a major problem. Look, I am not, let me be clear. I am not against this issue of, what do we call it, national character. I'm not against it. What I'm saying is that we must get the best and put the best person qualified in the position. Look, I've said that we must look at the strengths and the diversity, understand our differences, understand where we come from, and all that. We must ensure that we put the best person there. A person is not appointed because he's the younger brother of somebody, is the cousin of somebody, is brother of somebody. What are the person's core competences? In every aspect of it, look, I've met people from the north and from the east, brilliant people, fantastic individuals. who can hold their own and hold offices anywhere. So it's not a question of really too much of where the person comes from. It's the question of what is the quality of leadership that you want. I said that, look, we must have a conversation around this. Not who will lead us, but what is the quality that we're looking for? The character. These people exist in every part of this country. So it's not the question of national character, it's the question of choosing who the right person is. The PENCOM thing and all that, I read about it and I was just laughing. Because even the uproar was across party lines, was not a party issue, it was across party lines. Just it's a reflection of where we are today. When somebody says anything, the first thing you ask is, where is he from? Is he a Muslim? Is he a Christian? You have left what he has said. It's where you think is from that now determines how you react to what he has said. Somebody has stolen money, the person is cultural, I know leave him more, it's from Moscow. This is the problem we have. So we need to rejig our constitution. There's no doubt about it. We need to sit down, agree on certain things and rejig constitution, and then allow things to develop. There are countries that have more diverse people than we are. I mean, we're talking about China, India, and all that. They have more diverse people, but they are making a headway. They have a national question, a national agenda. They have a national whatever, and they're pushing it. So I think we need to rejig our constitution. We need to reset our thinking. The children, I worry for them because some of them are already polluted along religious and ethnic lines. We need to go back to a traditional like Amina said. She said something about teaching of ethics. I remember that when I was in secondary school, civics was taught by the principal to show you how important it was. My principal was, I was in Federal College. My principal only taught physics and civics. He taught civics for class 1, class 2, class 3. That's to show you that it was a very important subject for only people to be teaching. We have lost all that. We need to go back and begin to relate the children, let them understand the fact that this country is Nigeria, is not Oduduwa Republic or Arewa Republic or Biafra Republic. Once you understand, let them understand that this is Nigeria, it's not any of the republics. We need look like it's a lot of work to be done. But we must agree on what is to be done and start doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Abiru. Let me take this to Kamal Bakrin. Same question, national healing. How can we begin this whole process now that we're 60? Because for Justice Abiru, he also said that sadly, young Nigerians have started making the same mistakes, repeating the same mistakes that the older ones have made, to the extent that if you're very active in the social media space, the argument is laced with such kind of bickering, agitations, to the extent that we forget, to reason in the line of logic, and even morality when we bring up such kinds of issue. You have the floor, Kamal.
Thank you very much. This is something I'm absolutely passionate about, and I completely agree. There are three things that I see when it comes to this issue. One is we do need to standardize the national narrative. What I mean by that is there's so much sectional telling of our story. You go to you go to certain mosques, you get very, very poor narratives about everybody else. You definitely go to churches, some of these big pastors saying the most horrific, hateful things about other faiths. All that, there has to be a standardized narrative. What led to the Nigerian Civil War? What led to the first coup? What led to all these things need to be properly understood, not just told from a particular side of the story that gives you the impression that Nigeria started either on the 1st of January 1966 or on the 29th of July 1966, and so on and so forth. This is the unfortunate thing that a lot of our young people have fallen into. Okay, the narrative just starts from a particular place, and that's all they get to know. And it's unfortunate, as you said, you see a 20-year-old holding very hateful beliefs about his fellow countrymen and women. That's number one. Number two, I think there has to be a conscious effort at crafting this nation's sort of national ethos. What I mean by that is that a lot of what we see in the rest of the world did not happen by chance, okay? The role that Hollywood played in sort of like keeping the spirit of patriotism and what have you in America is often underestimated. We do need to be very conscious about creating this national narrative. We have a national orientation agency. How well are they doing this? And so on and so forth. I mean, it is open to question, right? But we do need to. I know that the US government used to sponsor Hollywood so that they crafted the narrative about America. Yes, it is a flawed country, but it is ultimately a great country. We need to do that. These things don't happen by chance, and we are leaving our own to chance. And then the third part is there has to be a high degree of responsibility across the board. People need to be called out for their nonsense. If somebody, whether Muslim or Christian, is saying wrong things, is stoking hate and divisiveness, it needs to be promptly addressed, both by individuals like yourself and myself. We need to call people out. We need to fact check a lot more. And at the same time, we need to bring the weight of the law to bear on people who are doing these things, because they're often doing it for their personal selfish agenda. It is not in the interest of their faith. It's not in the interest of their tribes. It's not in the interest of their ethnic groups. When you dig to the bottom, it's either somebody is trying to corner power and influence, or actually just outrightly trying to steal money. That is where you find it is hardly ever about faith and culture and ethnicity. It is typically about selfish gains. And so for me, again, to recap, we do need to standardize our history. We do need to absolutely make a conscious effort at policing all of this, and we must craft a national narrative properly. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and I'll take this to. I mean, you've heard what Kamar has said, and it's quite instructive there that we must also try as much as possible to change the narrative and have this national consciousness, changing our ethos system, craft a positive narrative for us, because that is how we work up. Given the American example by Kamar is why we see some children till they still think that Spider-Man does exist. There is a Superman somewhere, and the good guys always win. You watch a movie, 9 out of 10, good, conquers evil. Is to create the mindset for the young one coming to say, truly, if you're a bad guy, ultimately, which is what life is, I think, well, you'll be found and you pay dearly for it. And he's saying that we should start creating that kind of consciousness and system in place. So I mean, now we're trying to have this rebirth for us as a people, looking through what every other person has said today, yourself inclusive. How can we begin this process?
Well, I can't agree more with him. I think he's spot on, and I think that the media is a powerful tool. Corporate organizations don't leave their corporate communications to chance. They determine their brand identity. Have we as a nation determined what it means to be Nigerian? What is our identity? Have we sat down to work on that project to say, this is what it means to be Nigerian? As we are all working very hard now towards future strategic development plans for the nation, are we ensuring that there is consensus? Are we ensuring that there is wide consultation across board to ensure that everybody's opinion and views are taken on board? But this idea of a national identity, I think, is really fundamental. And it's a question, now that we have turned 60, so that we're not in the same place, 60 years from now. say, what does it mean to be a Nigerian? What does it mean? What is my responsibility as a Nigerian citizen if I stay in Nigeria? What should be my source of pride? What should be my expectation? What am I going to give Nigeria? And for giving what I give to Nigeria, what can I expect from Nigeria in return as a Nigerian? Why should I be proud to hold that green passport? You know, and why should other nationals want to give up their own nationality and get hold of a Nigerian passport? Like the situation we have today, where many people, many Nigerians are thinking, oh, if only I could get a US passport or get a British passport. I only have a Nigerian passport. I've had the opportunity to get foreign passports. My entire family only has a green passport. But what does it mean? So that is something that we need to work on, you know, as a nation, whilst also realizing that we should be doing less of asking at this stage, given the environment, of what we should be doing less of asking, what can Nigeria do for me? Rather, we should be asking, what can we do for Nigeria? And part of what we can do for Nigeria is helping to craft that national identity. You know, as Margaret Mead has said, it just takes a few people. It's never more than a few people who come together to initiate, you know, major change. So it's not going to be, you know, 1 million people. It's going to be no more than 5, 10 people in a room who had an idea and felt something was important and committed to it in heart and mind and in resources to make that change happen. So that's important. I also want to talk about, you know, the digital platforms, because technology is here with us. We're already so far behind in terms of where we are, you know, in our educational system and structure. But digital we can leapfrog using technology, just like, you know, the telecommunication companies were able to leapfrog with mobile telephony. So technology presents a huge opportunity for us if we utilize it well, for us to not only address certain issues in education and also in the health sector, and in fact across all sectors, in agriculture and so on. We can really use technology, and it's therefore very important that we invest in trying to build digital acumen for all our children, you know, all the youth, to really build that capability. That's very, very important, so that they can help themselves, because our numbers are so huge that realistically and truly and practically, I don't think it would be realistic to expect that government to be able to address the needs of, you know, the 200 million Nigerians. So we need to come up with this kind of strategy that will enable people to help themselves. And one way that we can do that is building capabilities. And one skill that we must build is the technological skill, and Nigerians are quick learners. So that's important. The other thing is to say, okay, we're now in the digital age, we are in the era of the internet, and social media is there. So in terms of trying to craft the narrative for Nigeria, you know, social media, of course, has its pluses and has its minuses. But, you know, the positives are numerous. And let us utilize the social media platforms to begin to change the narrative of this country, to begin to change the narrative in terms of the identity of the Nigerian. Why is it that everybody, when they talk about Nigerians, they say Nigerians are 419, Nigerians are corrupt? What percentage of the Nigerian population are corrupt? What percentage of Nigerian population are doing 419? The majority of the Nigerian people are hardworking. The majority of the Nigerian people, in my opinion, are honest. The majority of the Nigerian people are loving and very giving and very helpful. The majority of Nigerian people are smart. They just need the enablement and they will get on with things. So let us take charge of our own narrative, because we can do that. And perhaps that will encourage the bad elements to begin to do the right thing. Especially as previous speakers have said, we must begin to call them out and ensure that there are consequences, you know, for the wrong kind of conduct that is displayed. So the opportunity is there for us. It's just for us to seize it, realizing Nigeria is really in our hands, and Nigeria needs to begin to take the right steps from today. It's never too late. The day you start is the right time. We can start today to transform this country and set Nigeria on the agenda for true greatness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And well, we'll take a moment from this conversation, and when we come back, we'll take our comments from our viewers watching us. Well, good to know that everyone is still there. I think we still have about 15 minutes before we wrap this up. I think the Guild of Muslim Professionals and so many other Muslim groups should be doing more of such a virtual meet. I'm not yet, but I did say that we should, latch on to technology the way we've seen, telephony, being improved here. It is, the frequency with which we do this all the time, we get a hang of it. We get to perfect the system, and of course, we can have such, conversation, all the time. Call it some of the good that COVID-19 has given to us. In every, really bad situation, you get to see some of the good. But again, at this time, as Muslims, we are asking the favors of Allah to help the world and help us as a nation to heal. And for those who have lost their loved ones to the, deadly virus, we ask that Allah, bless their soul and grant them Jannah Firdaus. So quickly, we want to see what we can get from those who have been participating, watching us from start, direct questions to any of the panelists quickly. Let's see how this conversation pans out. Well, we have quite a number of comments here, and I think some of the comments here is from Aramu. Aramu is saying this is to all panelists, and he says, can the slide be sent to us? I'll wait to hear from the organizers that they'll let me in on that and how people can get the slide, because they're quite robust, detailed to the extent that it shouldn't just end here. And I know, well, Aramu, I know that the organizers will put this, it will make news in the dailies and online platforms, don't you worry. But another one, okay, I think it's been answered. Yes, they will be shared. And of course, We also have this from Sani saying Allah should reward all of our panelists today with for more enlightenment. And this one here comes from Olajide Latifa saying it's still an appreciation to our discussants today. And of course, on and on. I think I actually want questions. I actually want questions. We have loads of them. And
there is a question bar up there. You can check the few questions, about 7 of them in there. Perhaps you could just.
Yeah, if you check the Q&A button there, you've got about.
Okay, all right. Okay, we have the questions now. And what other, this is coming from Kabir saying, what other viable areas apart from agriculture can we focus on to improve our GDP since oil will soon dry up? I want to take all the questions. Please, my panelists, can we just note them down, because we have about 7 questions so that we can just give answers to each one of them. This one I'm sure is for Kamar. What other viable areas aside agriculture can we focus on to improve our GDP since oil will soon dry up? And from Aramu Dauda, with a quantum of opportunities and decadence in all sectors, how best can Nigeria be fixed? And from Abdullah Shoaib, Dr. Shoaib is saying, what role does ethnicity and religion play in developing a national character? He's also saying that, I think his comment is saying that in resetting our moral and ethical values to default mode, do you think that our current institutions, that's mosques and churches, have failed us? If not, how can they be used to reorientate, mobilize, and conscientize Nigerians for a greater nation? He says specifically this question is directed to Amina Oyagbola. And of course, Nana Fatima Alakija is saying, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam, happy independence and good morning to all panelists. Your question is for Mrs. Oyagbola. Ma'am, I'm all for women participating in nation building, but how can we begin to achieve this in a society like Nigeria that traditionally puts so much on the shoulders of women when it comes to their family? What is your advice for Muslim professionals, please? And same sister, Alakija, another question for the Honorable Justice Abiru. She sends her salam, and she says, as Muslim professionals, how do we effect the planning of this roadmap towards greatness? How can the Nigerian Ummah begin to share in a united vision for ourselves and the nation? And she said her final question. She's got 3 questions. Well, it's all good. And this time is for you, Kamar Bakrin. And she's asking, is there any agency for Nigerian Muslim professionals to contribute and participate in strategic economic growth activities to strengthen us as a whole? Is this something we should have if we do not already? And from Mohammed Bello is asking, are there things we have been doing correctly as a nation and people which we need to be, doing, talking about re-emphasizing those things that we have been doing if they are actually something good. So let's start with Justice Abiru, who's not, you don't have too many questions directed at you. So let's start with you by answering those ones that have been sent to you before we come back to Kamar Bakrin and later on to Amina.
Honestly,
Mr. Lady, I'll suggest, sorry, please. I'll suggest Mrs. Amina Oyagbola start first because she said she has to go by 11.
Okay, I think you should have allowed me to know that because I'm the moderator. Okay, we take it to Amina Oyagbola to answer our questions before we come back to the Honorable Justice Abiru. Apologies.
Thank you very much, moderator. I don't know if you could kindly just remind me which questions again. Sorry,
I think some of the questions are for you specifically. One from he's asking role of for what role ethnicity plays in national character. No, specifically from Shoaib, he's asking you to speak to our ethical values. In resetting our moral and ethical values to default mode, do you think that our current institutions, whether mosques and churches, have failed us? If not, how can they reorientate and mobilize and give Nigerians, greater nation?
Okay, thanks. That's a great question. I think that I think that we all have responsibility to drive ethics and ethical values and principles, and it comes from the top always if you want to do it effectively. So the first unit of influence is the family. So the parents must infuse ethical principles and values in their children. The next port of call will then be schools. So, you nurture your children at home, and then, you start exposing them to the external environment. And the first exposure is in school, where they meet people from other homes. So if they meet unethical people from other environments, then they begin to pick up traits here and there. If the teaching population and the administrative staff are also not ethical, they can transmit, those values to your children. But the ultimate responsibility is that of the parents when the children are growing up, because no matter what influence, what they may be exposed to at school, they still come back home. And the parents who monitor closely, who supervise, will be able to pick up, traits, that they observe and correct them. So it starts there. And then you finally go into the workplace, and each workplace has its own culture. So you have your individual values, your own personal values and your own culture. And then you walk into an environment that has, is an established environment where, another culture, which they call the corporate culture and corporate identity, has been driven. And if you want to succeed in that environment, if it's a good culture, then it enhances the qualities that you already have as a personal individual. But if the culture in that environment is toxic or is unethical, and the only way to succeed is to follow that path of giving bribes to be able to achieve sales, giving bribes to be able to execute contracts, and so on and so forth, then that would then become your own culture. And that applies to both corporate environments and also, in the public sector. So, but it can be changed. And one thing I want to say here as a human resource expert is that a lot of the time when people think of cultural change, they think, oh my God, it's so difficult. Culture takes years and years and years and years to change. Yes, that is a fact, and it is true. But you can start by changing behaviors and habits, which is very easy to do. And I've done that successfully. So let us change our habits. Start by changing habits and changing people's behaviors. And in a very short time, in 1 year, in 2 years, you can change people's behaviors dramatically, such that, over time, over the long term, the medium and long term, you then evolve a new culture. So it's possible. And I think that there are many institutions that can play a critical role. You mentioned some of them. They include the churches, they include the mosques, they include, there's so many organizations that we all belong to, according to our beliefs and so on, traditional beliefs and so on. So the leadership of those organs can do a lot. So the imams, the priests, the pastors, what do they teach? What do they convey? But most importantly, if you want to be an effective teacher, don't just preach to me and do something else. You have to role model the right behaviors. As a matter of fact, once you role model and you walk the talk, you actually don't need to preach to me, because I will just see that what you are doing is right and that it yields positive results in terms of rewards for your good deeds. And that I want to follow that path. I want to follow that example. And after following that example, when you see people role modeling the right behaviors, then those people have the moral authority to then teach. But when you don't role model those behaviors, you don't have the authority to teach. So it's easy to do if we commit to it as a nation. We commit to ethical leadership, we commit to ethical behavior, and we commit to ethical actions as individual Nigerians. And then you'll see it happen in the collective. Thank you.
So I think it looks like, well, that should be, I thought you had more questions posed to you before we let you go, since we understand that you have a busy schedule from 11 o'clock.
I can take one.
Yes.
There was one about women something.
Yes, I'm trying to look out for.
women something.
Yes, women participation in helping us drive this whole process. Someone did ask a question, I think, still from Nana Fatima Alakija.
Yeah. So the role of women, I think I mentioned that in the course of my talk, is absolutely critical. We're not where we need to be in terms of, full female representation, especially in the political sphere, in terms of appointments. We're not looking for tokenism. I'm certainly not looking for tokenism. And I know that a lot of women leaders are not looking for tokenism. We're talking about ensuring women are involved, that the voice of women are heard because they represent 50% of the Nigerian population. So their opinion matters and their contribution in and input into driving policy matters. And if they're not in the room where the decisions are going to be taken, then how will you ensure that their voices are heard and that their views are taken on board so that the policies that you come up with will have a meaningful impact and touch on the lives of the people of Nigeria? That's the logic behind that. So we want to ensure that there's proper female representation. What does that mean? The ideal is at least 50%. Nigerian women represent 50% of the population, but let's start at 35%, which was what was contained in the gender policy that has not been implemented, in the political sphere. The same thing, ditto for private sector. Private sector is doing a little bit better, but it's not really where it should be in terms of women in leadership and women in decision making. When you look at boardrooms, when you look at executive committees, the decision making organs of an institution, there's never more than one woman or two women if there's a woman there at all. And that really needs to change. How can you be running a business that is supposed to be serving a market, and that market consists of a demographic, 50% of which are female, and you don't have inside your boardroom, in your own interest, somebody with the profile that understands that demographic, that can make suggestions into the products and the decisions you want to make and deploy in the marketplace. So there's a logic around diversity in a boardroom so that the decisions you make are much richer, more complete, and will actually touch and improve on your bottom line. It's going to impact more than 15% improvement. It's been proven on the bottom line just by ensuring that you have diversity in your boardroom and and as part of your executive committees. So let's look at what our gender statistics look like inside our organization and begin to deliberately work on improving that on a merit basis. Don't just put a woman there because you're trying to achieve a gender target. Look for the women that have the competency, look for the women that can add value, and they exist. And if you have any challenges in that regard, please come to me. I have a database full of very competent women that I can suggest to you. And you can also go to the Institute of Directors. They also keep a database of women who are competent. I'm on the governing board of the Institute of Directors, and they can perform a useful role there. So, those are the reasons why we say women must be involved. So we can begin to tackle a lot of the women, not just of the women in professions in the workplace, also the women in the rural areas, who 70% of whom are the ones tilling the soil. What are their own needs? Sanitary facilities, infrastructure, access to finance, and so on and so forth, and capacity building. Kamar touched on most of them. So let's begin to ensure that they are adequately represented in the forums that they should be represented in, so that the issues that they are grappling with and the obstacles and the impediments and the constraints to their progression, to their ability to contribute to Nigeria's development and socioeconomic progress can be taken out of the way, in our collective interest as a nation.
And at this point, I must say many thanks to you, Amina Oyagbola, for being such nice company, because you have added value to our conversation today. We're saying thank you, and we do hope that, well, in the days ahead, as we walk towards our 61st anniversary, we should call you again to speak with us on our program packaged especially by the Guild of Muslim Professionals. So we'll let you go now, and we'll say thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And it's been a privilege and an honor for me to be on this panel. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you have a blessed day. So now quickly, we take this question now to our very respected Honorable Justice Abiru. And the question there is, as Muslim professionals, how do we effect the planning of this roadmap towards greatness? How can the Nigerian Ummah That's the for those who are not Muslim watching. Nigerian Ummah means the Nigerian community now, Muslim community, begin to share in a united vision for ourselves and the country.
Thank you for that question. I think the first thing we need to do is first agree on this shared vision, and then when, as individuals, professionals as individuals, we belong to different groups on WhatsApp, on wherever. Ensure that you direct all discussions towards this national shared vision. When people are thinking about negative issues about this and all that, you redirect them to this. It's tedious. I do it a lot on different also groups I belong to. When people are talking about how the government, I direct them to this shared national question. I ask them, what are you contributing? Stop criticizing. What are you doing to make a difference in your own sphere? In our own little spheres of influence, your family, in your office, try and sell this idea, discuss it, raise it, make sure it's continuous discussion. Look, like I said, it's going to be a long and tedious road. GAP, for example, the organizer of this program, I hope that after this program, they're going to come together and look at all these ways and they're going to try and come up with something they can also share in their own different areas of influence. By the time you do this, you begin to populate the idea among the generality of the people, and then you begin to redirect and change people's thinking. Let's talk about the Nigerian Muslim Ummah. Nigerian Muslim Ummah is in conflict. Let me be honest with you. I've had discussions with people, and I've said, look, we need to differentiate between Muslim politics and Muslim politics. What you've had dominate are Muslims in politics, use religion as a means to an end. They do not play Muslim politics. So Nigerian Muslim is in conflict. That conflict needs to be resolved for the Ummah to be useful to the project. But what I'm appealing to is that professionals at the different spheres of influence begin to share this view, begin to push this agenda, begin to let people understand that this is Nigeria can be great. Stop complaining. What can we do? What are things that you can contribute to the system? And then it grows. It grows, and like I said, it's like nurturing an orchard. It takes time. We must be relentless, must be committed to it, and must be unflagging in the pursuit of it. Thank you. Sulaiman, I'm done. Thank you. I'm done. I'm done. You can hear me. Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
The problem appears to be from Suleiman's end.
Because I'm on, I can't hear him.
Suleiman, we can see you're speaking, but no sound is coming through.
Maybe Kamal, maybe you just take your own questions. And it sort itself out gradually.
Okay, if I can just get okay, it's taken off.
Okay, I've sent him a private message that we can't hear him.
Okay. Should I go ahead and take my questions real quick?
Yes.
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so there were two questions actually that I recall. One talked about what else one can do outside of agriculture, and the other talks about how to participate sort of in like development type platforms. Okay, I think our moderator is trying to reconnect. Yes, we have our.
I guess that was me. Apologies.
Yes, yes.
So, Mr. Bakrin, I'm sure you got the questions for you. So, yes. Okay, let's go.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I know we've run out of time, so I'll make this very, very brief. I think before we move away from the topic of agriculture, I do think it's important to emphasize tremendous potential that still exists in this often overlooked space. Specifically, I do think that while it looks like agriculture is sufficiently exploited, we need to look at about 3 areas in agriculture. One is just the opportunity from better agricultural practices, as well as higher value crops that can be cultivated in this country. So instead of just going out there and growing maize and cassava, there's opportunity to cultivate, as I said, higher value crops. This continues to be an opportunity in this economy for actually generating wealth. Another area in agriculture that we have often overlooked is in agricultural processing. This, I can assure the audience, is an area of focus for this government, and it's an area of focus for this country, and it holds a lot of potential, which is agricultural processing, and it's something that we need to seriously look at. Related to that is the issue of export processing as well. Processing of agricultural products for export. We have not sufficiently taken advantage of a lot of opportunities out there under things like AGOA, the upcoming Africa Free Trade Zone agreement that is coming up, and so on and so forth. So this holds a lot of opportunity potential for agriculture, both in terms of high value crops in Nigeria, processing of crops, as well as exports. So that's as far as that is concerned. If you're still not convinced about agriculture, then you can look at other things. The financial services, there was an advertisement around Halal Invest. The whole space of investment products for Muslims, it is a grossly underserved area that we can greatly benefit from. We have easily 100 million Muslims in this country. A lot of their financial needs are not properly addressed in a way that Muslims are comfortable with. This creates massive potential, whether it is for micro Islamic finance to even larger Islamic corporate finance, and so on and so forth. There's a massive opportunity here that we really need to begin to think about. There's a broad range of opportunities around healthcare, even entertainment, transportation, and education. In the area of education, there's education technology as well. Again, creating the appropriate kind of platforms for education. So just so much. I mean, we're all aware of the challenges in the country and what have you, but this is just trying to highlight a few of the areas. In manufacturing, for example, there's the potential for production of construction materials. Again, we're having Chinese people come into the country and create massive businesses in places like Ogun State, producing ceramics and so on and so forth. And we have a country of 200 million people with a very significant housing deficit. So the figures are just mind-boggling. The potential is there. There's also solid minerals. It's not just about gold and diamonds and what have you. No, there's opportunity for products like barite and bentonite, which are used in various industries. Even the ceramics industry requires a lot of what is technically solid minerals. And then there's also the opportunity for beneficiation. So the opportunity space is vast if we look at it the right way, and it is not limited to oil and gas by a long shot. That is as far as that's concerned. I'll quickly take the next area and wrap up my bit, which is around how to participate. There are two ways to look at this. One is sort of like government related. So you have agencies like SMEDAN, the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Authority of Nigeria, SMEDAN, which does a lot of work around supporting SMEs. Anybody who wants any connection with that, because at the moment, part of my work also involves advising the federal government of Nigeria on industry, trade, and investment. So anybody who needs additional information can contact me through the organizers. There's also the Industrial Training Fund that provides quite a bit of training for SMEs and so on. That is from the government side. But I would also urge us to actively participate in sort of the Muslim NGOs that have like economic development arms. So I know, for example, that MICA has some things around economic development. I know that Tahara Collective, which I'm the chairman of the board, also does quite a lot of work around economic empowerment, including granting interest-free loans to small micro businesses, including trying to encourage entrepreneurship and just overall economic empowerment for students in universities and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of ways you can participate, or you can even create an economic empowerment arm within your local or your immediate Muslim organization as well, because we need it in the community. We need it a lot. We need it a lot. Thank you very much.
I think at this point, well, my last question has been answered from the conversation. I think you just had with us. I was going to ask how we can instill hope and faith in us, especially in our country. But I think looking at what we can do, the different opportunities there where young Nigerians can plug into, as well as what Honorable Justice Abiru and Amina Yagola have both highlighted. I think the hope is high now, and I'm hoping that well, we can truly reach out to the organizers and see how we can get contacts, from conversations we've gotten here so far, and see how you can key into all of that. We are just 13 minutes, past 11, which is quite stretching this, but quickly time for us to call on the Executive Director of GMP, Architect Latifa Olajide, to give us her closing remarks so that we can wrap up this very, very special moment on Nigeria's 60th anniversary.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I wish to cover the Guild of Muslim Professionals for Peace and Development. I wish to thank our speakers and the facilitator for the brilliant presentations and conversations that we've had today. I also wish to thank our audience for taking time out, for trusting GMP to spend quality 2 hours, discussing about Nigeria at 60. As has been rightly said, we are a nation blessed with abundance of natural and human resources. And it is hoped that with this kind of conversations, we will begin to see or channel a roadmap to achieving the greatness that has been eluding us for quite some time. This is our inaugural October 1st convention, and we hope to make it an annual affair. So, but like has been rightly said, within a year, we would also try to see how we could actually, get more of this sort of conversations going on, so that we actually get used to talking about Nigeria and then engaging the brilliant minds and brilliant entrepreneurs, those in government, those in academics, to actually begin to do things that will take the country in the right direction. Once again, I want to say a big thank you to everyone. I hope the 2 hours that has been spent has been worth your while. GMP, the Guild of Muslim Professionals, was founded in 2013, and we hold conventions, annual conventions, and we'll be holding the next one, inshallah, in December, and we hope every one of us will be able to join us. You can also reach out to us, or we can also connect with us on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn account, and also on other social media handles, gmp.ng. Very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, the Executive Director, GMP, Latifa Olajide. She's an architect. The beauty of GMP that was founded 7 years ago is to really, really see how we can develop Nigeria and ensure a peaceful nation. And this, as she said, It's the inaugural, that is the fest that we're doing, and we'll see loads and loads of Oktoberfest, and of course the December event will be, Oktoberfest, a lot of them will come, and of course the December event, inshallah, will come your way. So follow us on LinkedIn, and also we have our social media handle. Reach out on LinkedIn, and you get all of that, so that you can get information on programming and get to latch onto opportunities that are bound from Muslim professionals to you. At this point, I would like to say thank you so much for being such a nice company to our panelists today. Amina Oyadbola, many thanks. And of course, Honorable Justice Abiru, thank you very much for your time. And of course, Mr. Kamar Barkin, it's a delight having all of you join us today on this event. Happy Independence to everyone. God bless Nigeria, and God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you.
Welcome to our world of modest fashion. Welcome to Marble Modest Hub. What is your occasion? Is it formal, casual, recreational, ceremonial, or adventurous? Are you worried about the weather, cold or hot? You can achieve your modest fashion goal. We've got you covered for everything modest and fashionable at affordable, classy, quality guaranteed, and at your fingertips. Reach out to us on Instagram and Twitter at MMH Nigeria and on Facebook at Marble Modest Hub. You can also call us on 090-901-11938. Welcome to a modest journey of fashion. Modest fashion. Modest fashion is not about comparison between the conventional and conservative fashion choices. It's an expression of self-decision to appear modest irrespective of your color, language, culture, worship, or social class. Welcome to our world of modest fashion. Welcome to Marble Modest Hub. Reach out to us on Instagram and Twitter at MMH Nigeria and on Facebook at Marble Modest Hub. You can also call us on 090-901-11938. you.